Hello and welcome to another episode of Stop the Clock. We're your hosts as always, Sam Furmaniak and Jude Ocañas, and it is the off season. J. Cole prepared us, but not well enough because oh my goodness, it has been an absolute whirlwind. We're sorry we're getting this out late. A lot of off season moves. Maybe it's probably a good thing we did because obviously more moves has happened since when we would have done this podcast. So we're just gonna kind of get into so far sort of our off season winners and off-season losers. So teams that have made good signings, have been able to re-sign some of their players, made some good trades, really built their team up heading into the draft and next season. So Jude, how about we just start off? Let's talk about your off-season winners. And this is so far. So I
This
want
is
to
so
preface this, especially when I talk about my losers. Like
exactly.
they could still make moves down the line that could get them better, but
And we'll get
so
into that
far.
because I'm in the same boat. But I do
Yeah.
want to start with I think this got to be the biggest winner, if not a top three winner, and that's the Chargers. I think the Chargers, and I think maybe not in this podcast, but another podcast, me and Sam are
Oh,
definitely going to go in depth about just the whole entire AFC West. So I'm not going to talk about the big picture, but the Chargers, man. What they saw the first week, they knew they had to make some moves, especially with Denver getting Russell Wilson and obviously the Chiefs being the Chiefs. And the Raiders making a move for Devontae Adams. So I think what the Chargers did was huge. I mean, they got J.C. Jackson, who's a lockdown corner. I mean, he's a guy that you could say, and Sam likes to say, he takes one side of the field off the equation. I mean, he really does with his lockdown ability. And then I'll just talk about the other guy, Khalil Mack. Not only, and we talked about him in the other podcast, not only is he a great pass rusher, but he's going to be really helpful in the run. And I think another guy like Joseph Day that they got from the Rams, an interior defensive tackle, between weeks 1 and 7 before his injury, he actually had a run stop rate of 15.7%, which was highest among all interior defensive linemen. So obviously, maybe it would have not carried on through the full season, but that's a positive rate through 7 weeks of football being one of the best run stoppers. And that's what they really needed. I mean, that's what we really saw with the Chargers. I mean, they have these prime years with Herbert and they're taking advantage of it. And that's why I have them as my biggest winner, because you're getting guys around Herbert to give him a Super Bowl team. And especially before you're going to have to pay him $50 million, you have him on your rookie deal. This is the perfect time. And they also brought back Mike Williams, one of their best receivers, if not the best.
yeah, no, I think you definitely hit on all those points. I mean, the Chargers have had a whale of an offseason. I'm just going to sort of take it down my list. So I have, for my offseason winners, I got the Chargers, I have the Jets, the Broncos, the Bills, and the Bengals as my 5 biggest offseason winners. There's a few teams you could put in there, but those are the 5 that I'm choosing. The Chargers, for all the reasons you just mentioned. I really like what the Jets have been doing. They signed Laken Tomlinson, who I think is one of the more underrated free agency signings. He played for Robert Saleh in that Kyle Shanahan offense in San Francisco. He finally gets one of his guys to come play for him with the Jets. They were able to get CJ Uzama, who's a really key leader for what's a young offense there. And then I really like them re-signing Braxton Berrios.
And you can't forget they brought back Joe Flacco.
Of course, yes.
Got to throw that in too.
And then the Broncos, I mean, obviously, they got Russell Wilson. They solved the quarterback position. They also were able to get some nice defensive line signings with your favorite player, Randy Gregory, and DJ Jones. The Bills, I mean, I think before the offseason, they were already the Super Bowl favorite. So they just went out and luxuriously spent $120 million to get Von Miller to bolster that pass rush. They got Roger Stafford, O.J. Howard, and Jamison Crowder could be nice complements for that Bills offense. And the funny thing, I think this with the Von Miller signing, and a lot of people are like, okay, like he's not going to give you those 13, 14 sack seasons that he has in the past. He's getting older. Why would you give him this big deal? And that's fine. He probably won't have double-digit sacks this season. But when you get to the playoffs, when you get to those big games, it's going to happen. Von Miller has the most sacks of any player ever to play in the Super Bowl. He does it in the playoffs. He did it in the NFC Championship game. In the Super Bowl, he had 2 sacks. So he's going to get those clutch crunch time sacks, which is something that the Bills definitely needed on defense. And then the Bengals, speaking of being able to protect and not protect, they have revamped their offensive line very well. They got Alex Kappa to kick off free agency, and then as the Cowboys released La'el Collins, they snagged him up. I thought my Broncos were going to get him. They didn't. He went to Cincinnati. He, as he just said in his press conference, is Joe Burrow's newest bodyguard.
And I got to give him his props on that. He definitely is going to be their bodyguard in Cincinnati. And I think Cincinnati did all the right things in this offseason. Obviously, they have more to do. But another guy that they brought back is, well, not only the great corner in Eli Apple, but they brought back Jesse Bates. And that's a big guy. Obviously,
absolutely.
you know, he didn't have a remarkable playoffs, but he's definitely one of the best safeties that you can look at in the league. And bringing back a guy like that in the secondary where you have playmakers, but Jesse Bates is that true playmaker on the defense. Being able to bring back a guy like that, especially for the secondary, is huge. Like you mentioned, I mean, this Cincinnati Bengals team, the whole talk, we even talked about it for a good solid time, is I mean, they had no chance because their offensive line was bad. And to go out and get a guy like Leo Collins, Alex Kappa, and even the Patriots center, Ted Krass, I think that's how you say his name. Guys like that to bring in and protect Joe Burrow. I mean, that's huge because we know what the offense is capable of. I mean, we saw it with Joe Burrow. I think he got sacked 71 times, which was the most in Super Bowl era. Get a good offensive line. And they got Hayden Hurst, you know, to replace CJ Uzomah. So I will say two other winners, just to keep it brief. I think the Bucs is another winner we have to look at. And, you know, it's crazy because I don't know how Tom Brady's coming back for his 23rd year. I mean, I personally didn't believe he was going to come back. He came back, but I think it wasn't only that Tom Brady came back. They were able to keep Godwin. They were able to keep Jensen, which was huge. I think Jensen had a hot market, and to bring him back was definitely big. Also, Carlton Davis. And then they added Logan Ryan, who, you know, maybe is not as good as Whitehead, but, you know, still a good replacement. They brought in Shaq Mason in a trade. I think he's an upgrade from Alex Kappa, honestly. He's great. He was great in New England. And then Russell Gage, who I think kind of fits what the Antonio Brown role was for the Bucs. But I found something interesting. He actually had more yards per route in each of the past 2 years than, can you guess who, Sam? Can you guess who he had more yards per route in the past 2 years? Then
Devontae Adams,
Christian Kirk. And Christian Kirk just got paid $21 million. They just got a guy for 2 times less the money than the Jaguars paid for Christian Kirk. So I say that's a steal with Russell Gage.
Yeah, no, I definitely debated with putting the Bucs on there. I mean, just getting Tom Brady back alone was enough to put them there. And you did say that they got Ryan Jensen back, and that was huge, but they did lose some key pieces. Ali Marpet, who's at the top of his game, he retired. They lost Alex Kappa. So that offensive line is not as good as it used to be, and Leonard Fournette is still not back with the team. Yeah. He's a key part. So that's why I refrained from putting them on my list.
And before we go further, I do want to add, I know we are only doing teams, or, you know, maybe you had a few players and losers, but I do want to say the biggest winner, and a guy that I think both of us have been preaching for the past few years, is Allen Robinson. I think Allen Robinson is arguably the biggest winner of any of the players that went anywhere. Obviously, you have all these great players that went to teams. We mentioned J.C. Jackson, all that. But Allen Robinson, right, he only had 66 targets in 2021, which is abysmal for a guy his pedigree. And he finally gets to go to a team with a star quarterback in Matthew Stafford, just won a Super Bowl. In fact, he just got himself a contract extension. I see it as a huge win for Allen Robinson. Yeah. Finally, now the thing is, he's got to perform, right? You know, it's been all this talk of, I mean, when he's given the targets and when he's been given the ability, he's shined, and I expect him to do that in LA.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, especially with him not being like the center of attention on that offense.
Exactly.
All the attention is going to go to Cooper Kupp. He's going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities.
Exactly.
Definitely looking forward to that. All right, now I want to talk about some losers this offseason. I'm going to list them out real quick. I got the Bears, the Falcons, the Patriots, and your Cowboys are on my list as well.
Respect.
Let me just start. The Bears, I'm going to keep it brief. They just really haven't done anything to build around Justin Fields. Like, they literally lost Allen Robinson, as we just said. The Patriots as well, they've made zero moves to really get better in an AFC that's just exploded this year in the offseason. The Falcons, this is one that I really want to talk about because I know you're probably going to talk about the Cowboys. So I got the Falcons, maybe not, I don't know. But they lost out on Deshaun Watson, which was huge because that was Deshaun Watson's hometown team. I personally thought he was actually going to end up in Atlanta. And then the report came out after they'd lost out on him saying that they probably would have gotten Leonard Fournette and Jarvis Landry, some high-profile free agents, to come there too. To cap it all off, of course, they started the offseason by finding out that their star receiver, Calvin Ridley, was suspended for an entire year. They lost Russell Gage. And now they just traded away Matt Ryan, their franchise quarterback for 14 years, for a third-round pick. And yes, they re-signed Marcus Mariota, or not re-signed, but they signed Marcus Mariota, and I'm all for giving Mariota a chance. I really believe he deserves it. But I really thought they're going into this draft with the 8th overall pick. They're in a prime position to get the best receiver in this class, whoever they deem that to be, whether it's Wilson or London. And now it's like, okay, do you stick with Marcus Mariota as your quarterback, or are you kind of forced into taking a quarterback in a kind of weaker quarterback class? If I'm the Falcons, I stick with Marcus Mariota. I do not draft a guy. I go get yourself a receiver. Because look, if the Marcus Mariota experiment works out, look at this. Great. You got your guy. If it doesn't, though, you're in a division with the Bucs that you're not going to win. You'll probably have a really bad season. And guess what? CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are headliners for that quarterback class next year. You can get one of those guys in the top 10. So they're in full rebuild mode. It has not been a productive offseason for them so far.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly with Atlanta. And I didn't actually have them up in my losers, but all your points actually made sense of why they're losers. I mean, obviously losing out on the Watson sweepstakes was number one. And then obviously, I mean, Ridley came before, but that was obviously the Watson losing out and then the Ridley. And just everything that's happening. So it's been a rough start for Arthur Smith, to say the least, in Atlanta. I'm with you. I would stick with Mariota. I don't think, especially in this type of quarterback class where – honestly, I can't really point at a guy and say he's the number one quarterback in this class. I really just wouldn't pick it or Willis. I mean, and that's even that we're even still questioning that when it's only probably a month away from the draft. I agree with you. You got to go receiver. There's a lot of talent at receiver. Drake London, Williams, Williamson, if he can recover from his injury, just plenty of talent. But I will kick it over the Cowboys because I do have them as their losers. And like you prefaced before this, these teams could still turn around. Now, Atlanta,
absolutely
not so much. I think the Cowboys, they could turn it around somewhat. And I want to say that's why I put them as my losers, because I truly believe the Cowboys, and we talked about it right when, Cooper got traded, and I was like, okay, this could either go one of two ways. The Cowboys really be smart, and they utilize the cap space that they're getting with, the $16 million and then releasing Leo. They got a little bit more money, restructuring Dak, and all these restructuring gain more money available. If they were able to use that money, I'd have looked at it as a big success. But Absolutely. We saw it through the first week. It was very rough. I mean, they missed out on the Von Miller, missed out on a lot of guys to get, and they really didn't sign anyone. I like the James Washington signing. I like the Dante Fowler signing. Both I personally see as more of depth. I think Dante Fowler. I think James Washington. I think James Washington will have a bigger role, but I think like a guy like Dante Fowler. But I will say there is a chance for this Cowboys team to, turn it back. And I know you want to talk about a few free agents. I think Tyrann Mathieu, Bobby Wagner, Zadarius Smith are three guys that I look at and say, obviously, Zadarius Smith might be a Viking, but if you can get two of those three guys and get this defense, it's still a good defense, right? They just got Curse back, which I'm super pleased that we were able to get Curse back. Honestly, fleeced him, but that we got him back. And I just see it as a loss because this front office never takes advantage of free agency and take advantage. In this free agency class, we looked at and says, man, this was a stacked free agency. Obviously, I wasn't expecting us to get J.C. Jackson. That was a dream, but looking at it and not taking advantage of any of it all, you got to put it as a loss. And especially for the front office and the whole Randy Gregory situation to mess that up and, within the matter of like seconds to instantly change his mind and then go to the Broncos, you can't say anything but a loss for the Cowboys this offseason.
Yeah, it's just they just really haven't improved as a team. Yeah. I mean, they lost Amari Cooper. They lost Randy Gregory. They weren't able – I mean, we kind of expected it, but they weren't able to keep La'el Collins. This team hasn't improved at pass rush. They haven't really improved anywhere. And to your point, and you'll notice this when we talk about the remaining free agents, I have a top destination for a lot of them, the ones you just mentioned, as Dallas. Dallas can absolutely still turn this around. It's just this has kind of been the theme with the Cowboys. And
it's been the trend.
They just don't have good free agencies. And to their credit, I think the Cowboys are one of the best teams at drafting in the NFL. I mean, they hit after hit after hit. I mean, like Dak, Zeke, CD, Trayvon Diggs,
Michael
Gallup, Micah Parsons,
Chidobe Awuzie,
yeah,
Dalton Schultz,
Byron Jones, DeMarcus Lawrence, Randy Gregory. Like, these are all players that the Cowboys drafted and were able to build up. And I still have confidence they can do that in this year's draft. I just think that's only going to get you so far. That'll get you the division. That'll get you a home playoff game. It won't get you to that next level that the Cowboys have been trying to get for so many years. So I think you got to make a run at a guy like Tyrann Mathieu or a guy like Zadarius Smith, maybe Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah, and just to finish on that note, I think that's the problem with the Cowboys is they think they're in. And like you said, they're a great drafting team, and I think they're one of the best. But you're at this point where you have all these guys in these prime years right now. You got Dak in his stretch that he's elite, whatever you want to say.
No, he's an elite quarterback.
He's elite in his category. You got a really good receiving core. Obviously, you lost Coop. You have a good defense. You have DQ. You have Kellen Moore, who can get me mad sometimes, but he's still a good offensive coordinator. But you have these years, and it's like they expect that only the draft can help you build. You have to get guys who are already proven to make the Super Bowl push. And that's, to me, you can't wait for years of development. Yeah, maybe you get lucky like a guy with Micah Parsons, but that doesn't happen every draft. And so for you to be able to even compete, you have to go out and get guys with experience. You can't be – while the players turn out great, you can't wait those 3-4 years anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the last 3 Super Bowl winners. Those teams were headlined by some big offseason, not draft, but I mean, I guess the draft's part of the offseason, but big free agent or trade acquisitions. I mean, you look at the Rams, they had a crap ton. Matthew Stafford, Von Miller were the 2 big ones. You look at the Bucks, Tom Brady. You look at the Chiefs the year before that, Tyrann Mathieu was a big free agency signing for them. So they just need to make that extra push, and they can still absolutely turn it around.
And so one last loser I'll go, and then we'll kind of segue into our section moving on. But I think Baker Mayfield is also a loser. And I like to do players because, I think he's a top loser, if anything. I mean, obviously it was known that Baker's years or even days were limited in the Browns. I thought maybe they were going to give him one more year at least.
It looked like it, yeah.
Exactly. But after the Watson trade, and then everything that happened after the Watson trade, Matt Ryan to the Colts, which we just saw, Jameis stays with the Saints, Mariota to Atlanta. The destinations are getting smaller and smaller for where Baker can land. I mean, I can really only think of a few places. I mean, the Panthers is probably the one team I could truly think of.
Maybe the Seahawks.
Maybe the Seahawks. Yeah. Maybe they want to be bad, so they'll stick with Drew Lock. No offense.
Y'all give Drew Lock too much hate. Go ahead.
But I just think he's such a big loser because that came off wrong.
Loser this offseason.
Offseason because, I mean, his play just didn't. It didn't mean anything this year, and then they get Watson, and it's like – and then all these other teams get quarterbacks. It's like, okay, where am I going to go? And
he said, I want to go to the Colts, and then they immediately trade for Matt Ryan.
So it's it's an interesting time for Baker. Now the real question is he even going to be a starter, right? Going into next season, I mean, that's going to be the question. Maybe there's a team has a quarterback problem or something. I don't know. To me right now, I would say no. He won't be a starter in week 1.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's the crazy thing is, like, I feel like there's still quite a few options out there, maybe not elite options at all, but, like, the quarterbacks, it's dried up. Like, there's not a lot of teams that are looking to get a guy. Like, and this is where I'm a little concerned for Jimmy G, because his market is gone right now, especially with the Colts getting Matt Ryan. What are the quarterback-needy teams? Maybe the Texans, if they don't want to stick with Davis Mills. You got maybe the Falcons, maybe the Seahawks. Like, a lot of guys either have their guy or are in the process of evaluating and developing their younger rookie, whether that be like the Jags or the Bears or the Jets with their guys. So
it's rough to be I
think next year it's going to open up a lot, especially if some of the rookies from last year don't pan out. Maybe if Tua doesn't pan out, of course, Seahawks and you look at all the quarterbacks, while there's not like a top tier class, there's still a lot of guys coming out at the quarterback position. So the quarterback market is absolutely drying up very quick. But let's sort of segue and move into some of the top remaining free agents, if you want to. I mean, there's some key ones. I think the number one free agent on on a lot of people's list is still unsigned, and that's Teron Armstead, the tackle from the Saints. So he could still re-sign with the Saints. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that, but 2 other spots that he could definitely sign with the Dolphins, they have a need. Personally, I'd love to see him go to Chicago to protect the blind side of Justin Fields.
Yeah, I think Teron Armstead, and then another guy is Tyrann Mathieu. I'm kind of shocked he's not signed at this point, just because of the elite level play that he's had for the most season. I mean, he has 13 interceptions over the last 3
I have a
years.
theory on that, by the way, on
Um,
why he's not signed.
well, actually, go ahead. Let's hear this theory.
I think he was honestly waiting for the Marcus Williams deal. That was the other hot safety on the market. I'm sure he believes, and I believe too, that Tyrann's a much better safety than Marcus Williams. And I think Marcus Williams was a great signing for the Ravens. However, that was the spot that I thought Tyrann would go. But again, the two potential teams that I look at for Tyrann Mathieu, it's the Cowboys, as we mentioned. And then I think the Eagles as well. They're working with a lot of cap space. I could see him there. I know it's not going to please you too much, but I mean, maybe looking for an NFC East team for Tyrann Mathieu.
Yeah, I think another guy is Jarvis Landry. Obviously he was cut or he was released by the Browns, if I'm correct. And Jarvis Landry is still a very serviceable receiver. I mean, by any means, I'd say he's a pretty good receiver. He's going to be 29 entering the 2022 season. There's a lot of teams that we look at, and they have great quarterbacks and they have all this, but they still need maybe not a number one receiver, because I don't think Jarvis is a number one, but
slot type
a
guy.
good number two and a guy that can play really well in the slot.
Yeah, and I wanna talk about his LSU buddy in OBJ, because I mean he's coming off the ACL. He revived his career in Los Angeles, and especially with Robert Woods being shipped off to Tennessee, he could definitely re-sign with the Rams. I think that's what I expect him to do. However, this is going to be my bold prediction.
Your bold prediction
for OBJ, and it's not just for OBJ. The LSU boys, they reunited in the NFL. They were both in Cleveland. However, Baker Mayfield was their quarterback, and it did not work out for them. There's a team right now that is in desperate need of receivers for their MVP quarterback, and that's the Green Bay Packers. My bold prediction is that OBJ and Jarvis Landry are going to link back up in Lambeau and run it with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers.
I could very well see that happening. To me, I don't think OBJ is going to go back to the Rams after, especially they just, got Allen Robinson. I don't see OBJ wanting to be kind of the third option. And obviously we'll see what happens with the ACL if he comes back fully healthy. Another guy, and we'll just finish it off, is Bobby Wagner. Obviously he didn't have a great season last year, playing through injury and stuff like that, and still a hell of a middle linebacker if you ask me. And I think any team that's currently looking for, obviously you can't expect the pure athleticism that Bobby Wagner provided in his more prime years, but a guy that knows the game really well. He's still in top tier physical shape. And you pair him with a guy like Micah Parsons, man, that'd be dangerous. I mean, I'm not trying to show bias, but if you could, you can't expect him to go and do everything. But if you can put him in the middle of the field, you give some guys, good guys around him, in that linebacking room and that defensive line, he can cause havoc. I mean, we've seen what Bobby Wagner has done when he has elite players around him. He's a beast.
Yeah, I mean, for me, teams that I can predict him going to, I think either the LA teams could be good fits. I mean, we know the Chargers are out there making big moves. I could see him coming in, helping Kenneth Murray develop a little more. And then the Rams. I mean, the big thing with the Rams, part of the reason they were able to extend Matthew Stafford that much and also sign Allen Robinson is they were setting aside a lot of money to be able to re-sign Von Miller. That, of course, did not happen. So they definitely have some money to play with. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Bobby Wagner staying in the NFC West. One more top-tier free agent I do want to wrap us up on, at least for free agents, is Stephon Gilmore. I'm a little nervous right now because there's a lot of things saying he could go to the Raiders, which we don't need any more people in the AFC West. Stop. Enough. I would love to see my Broncos maybe make a run at him. I mean, pairing him with Pat Surtain, I mean, that would be very nice considering we have to go up against Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Pat Surtain can't guard everyone. Even that's a brutal assignment for him on his own. Mm-hmm. And also the Cowboys maybe is an option for Stephon Gilmore. Maybe pair him with Trayvon Diggs. Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk about one more thing before we wrap it up. Obviously, we're talking about free agents, but the quarterback carousel has been quite interesting. Now we've already talked about the big names. But there's plenty of other quarterbacks that's been on the move. So I'll just say, I'll say the player and where he went, and then you just give me a quick take. So what about Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts? What are your thoughts on that?
I really like it. I think it fits what they're trying to do in Indianapolis. They're not expecting Matt Ryan to go out and throw for 4,000 yards, but it's a former MVP who's been there and knows how to do it. I think actually, despite the Colts not making that many moves, I think what they've done is smart. They were able to get a crap ton of picks for Carson Wentz and then ship a third rounder to get Matt Ryan, who's an upgrade, in my opinion, over Carson Wentz. So
I'd say an upgrade too.
Yeah, they've handled that quarterback situation nicely. So
they're a playoff contention team with good offensive line and MVP
in
running
a weak
back.
division.
Want to say that? Yeah. All right, Winston staying with the Saints.
I like it. There weren't a lot of options. I thought Winston was playing well before he tore his ACL for the Saints. So
he was 5-2 as a starter last year when they played.
I think he only had like 3 picks or something like that. So
Mariota to the rebuilding Falcons.
I actually really like it. I mean, I ranted on the Falcons earlier about how I don't like their offseason moves, but if they're in full rebuild mode and I'm not going to say tanking, I like the signing if they stick with him as their starter. I don't like a competition, but I'm more like it for Mariota than I like it for the Falcons.
I mean, they are paying him about $9 million a year, so I most likely will probably be their starter. All right, last two, Watson to the Browns, kind of a controversial one that a lot of people have.
Yeah, setting aside the legal allegations and all that, I love it. I mean, it makes the Browns, I think, an AFC championship contender, like instantly. They already have a very stacked roster. Now they get a quarterback of that elite stature without having to give up any players, and to pair him with Amari Cooper.
And watch, Amari Cooper is about to have a career year and shove it all.
No, yeah.
All right, final one. Mitchell Trubisky gets another shot, and he's going to Pittsburgh. What are our thoughts?
I don't love it. I feel like everyone's been riding this Mitchell Trubisky hype train, and I'm like, guys, y'all got to relax. I mean, you look at his best year in 2018 with the Bears. Like, he was average. I mean, that team was carried by their defense. I think he only threw for 24 touchdowns, something like that. Now, is it an upgrade over Ben Roethlisberger from last year? Yes, and they did make the playoffs with Ben Roethlisberger. So I don't love the signing, but I'm not overly concerned if I'm a Steelers fan. I mean, yes, the division is crazy stacked. However, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season in Pittsburgh, so I don't know how he's going to avoid that this year just with how stacked the AFC North is with Baltimore, Cincinnati, and now the Browns with Deshaun Watson. But, hey, I trust Mike Tomlin. I don't love the signing because I don't think Mitch Trubisky's that good, but, I mean, he gets a shot.
Well, those are all the quarterbacks. So I think that'll wrap it up for today's episode of Stop the Clock. We have a very exciting, actually, I think probably tomorrow we'll try to get it out where we go more in depth in the AFC West. Because I think you need to spend a whole podcast on the AFC West because of everything that it's absolutely absurd what happened in the past week just with the AFC West. So we'll tune into that. And any final words, Sam?
No, just hit us up on Twitter because we be posting a lot of stuff there. So ThatFootballTopic.
Also, real quick, St. Peter's is going to the Final Four. You heard it here first.
Oh, okay.
I'm kidding. They probably won't. But I just want it on record so when they do.
You got it. Yeah. I'll make sure to unfold the full clip so that they get you.
You just kind of want to.
Yeah, of course. All right. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Hit us up on Instagram, Twitter, and have a nice night.